HogvilleNET YouTube live post-game analysis. Not much to it and analyze today. I'm going to go ahead and say it. That was a shit show in the second half. Arkansas Razorbacks fall to the 25th ranked Auburn Tigers, 83-51. 32-point losing margin was the biggest deficit, the biggest losing margin ever at Bud Walton Arena for a Razorback team. The Razorbacks, were in a battle the first 16 minutes of the game or so. Really finished the poor half poorly, and as Arkansas has shown this year, not a tough team, not a team that gets in the trenches and battles and grinds. It's a team, give it credit, 5 wins out of its last 6 games, including a win here over a top 10 ranked Duke team at the time. But this was a team, once it got down by 7 at the break, really looked helpless in that second half. I mean, Auburn's leading scorer, Janai Broome, had not really gotten started, scoreless in the first half. He starts taking over, and everything else went against Arkansas in this game. And that's credit to Auburn. I mean, I'm not even going to go through stats. Auburn shot the ball better at all 3 levels. Auburn dominated the glass at both ends. Auburn was better in the turnover department. Auburn was better in fast break. Auburn was dominant points of the paint, dominant bench scoring. There's not a stat or category you could point to and say, this is what Arkansas did well. No point in running through it. I'm not going to go through numbers. The only number that matters is 83-51. This is an Arkansas team coming off a 106-point game in its last outing a week ago. Granted, that was a UNC Wilmington team, but a good mid-major, a dangerous mid-major, one that had knocked off Kentucky earlier in December and had a 6-game winning streak when Arkansas won that game. You thought Arkansas was starting to feel things getting a little bit better, especially with the addition of Keon Minifield Jr., who, by the way, did some good things, especially in that first half. And I thought Trevor in Brazil today was one of my keys in the pregame, was going to have one of those performances when you went back to his 3 double-doubles. The last of those was against Duke, 19-11-2. He's just not been the same. He was a little bit better against Wilmington with 12-8. Today he got double figures again and went 7 or 8 rebounds. It just wasn't enough. And it wasn't like he played an outstanding game, but the needle moved maybe a little bit. But this was just a clinic inside and out against a deep Auburn team. You see why Auburn's bench, I talked so much in the preseason, at even times when Arkansas started kind of maybe look to get back on track, about Arkansas's quality depth at every position, the ability to have skill set diversity. The problem is there is no cohesion. You don't see guys playing together to make the most of that for very long stretches of games. And Auburn's one that understands that. Even though Auburn's got a lot of veteran guys that return, probably advantage there compared to Arkansas, they got guys out of the portal as well. This is an Auburn team now, I think 7 wins in a row, has blown out a lot of high major teams. Arkansas is the latest. So this was a team coming in very serious. Top 20 in both offense and defense efficiency when you looked at KenPom. Top 15 in both net and KenPom. A little better in KenPom, actually. I think 10th, net was 15th. And the Razorbacks just looked helpless in that second half. Minus 25 points in the second half. Down 7 at the break. Arkansas had a 1-point lead, 27-26. Going into that under 4-minute timeout. And one thing I really thought at the outset, one of my pregame, I didn't do a pregame HogvilleNET YouTube live today, but I did have a preview article, and I went through 3, I typically go through 2 or 3 keys for winning for the Hogs, and one of those was Arkansas was going to have to attack and pressure the rim. Auburn is so good at blue-collar 50-50 balls, hustle plays, getting in transition. And so the only way when you're not really good at those things is you just got to attack those guys. You got to get downhill, put pressure on that rim, find ways to get to the free throw line, win that battle. Arkansas, the few times it got there, was awful, by the way, just awful. Started 2 of 7. I think that's what they were at halftime. Finished just above 50%. That didn't impact the outcome, but Arkansas didn't do that. Arkansas started settling for 3s early. And you saw Minifield hit a couple. Brazil hit one. Then it was Minifield to Brazil in transition. Brazil takes a couple of long strides from the baseline corner to the rim, and he's dunking it. And Arkansas went up 11-5. But the Hogs settled for too many 3s early and often, didn't pressure Auburn's defense, didn't work the ball inside, didn't get anybody in foul trouble, and didn't make this a blue-collar game. That's how you get to the free throw line, and Arkansas's elite there. Top 3 in the country coming into this game in free throws attempted per game. Just couldn't manufacture that. And when they did, the few times I mentioned, they weren't very good there. This was an Arkansas team that laid an egg today. You saw Eric Melsman. I wrote about this in my Stock Risers report right after the UNC Wilmington win. Even though 13 or 14, however many guys played against Wilmington, I said, if you look at the minutes in that game and the win over Abilene Christian, Actually, the guys playing double-digit minutes or more had actually started to shrink because Arkansas came in averaging 11 guys averaging 10 or more minutes, but it's shrank down there around 7. Against Wilmington, it was only 6. And you saw that in the first half. You saw Musselman go with what I prescribed as a top 5 guys with a 3-headed monster at center, wrapped around that, and maybe 1 or 2 guys off the bench coming in and getting an opportunity in the guard spot. But really what you saw was Arkansas really try to tighten the rotation down. It started a big lineup. All the problems we talked about that Arkansas has on the season, battling on the glass, all these things, Musselman went big. First time we've seen 3 bigs on the floor to start a game. Jalen Graham, obviously Trevor Brazil, and Chandler Lawson. So you had 2 6'10s, Lawson at 6'7", 6'8". But with that wingspan, he's a 5 in Arkansas system. And I think it helped Arkansas initially, but Arkansas really, other than putting up way too many threes and getting off to that kind of we're going to play a perimeter game start, Auburn really attacked the offensive glass. And then on Arkansas's missed shots, whatever it was, forcing turnovers, missed shots, Auburn ran. Auburn got out in transition. So I thought the early chinks in Arkansas's armor were settling for threes on offense, not getting back in transition defense, and then having problems like we've seen them so many times, really struggling to keep other teams off the offensive glass. So Auburn had some extended possessions. When you looked at it statistically at halftime, shooting-wise, both teams were right around 40%. Auburn just a little bit better. 7-point lead there. But I thought the transition game was benefit Auburn to get to halftime with that 7-point lead. Offensive glass again, then Arkansas settling. And then Arkansas just had some really bad possessions to close out the first half. Everything spilled over to that second half. Auburn jumped out to a double-digit lead pretty quickly. They were 20-plus lead at the 10-minute mark. The game was over. Musselman was resigned to basically playing everybody. Auburn kept its key guys on the floor. I mean, Auburn, Bruce Pearl could have gone beyond his top 10 and matched what Arkansas was doing on the floor, with about 6 or 7 minutes left. He chose not to. So Auburn just kind of continued to build on the lead. I'm not throwing up a complaint against how Pearl managed his game and his bench. I'm just saying it was ugly, but maybe a little bit of the ugliness at the end had to do with some of that. But it was, again, 32 points speaks plainly enough. It's the worst ever losing margin ever at Arkansas. The Hogs are 9-5 right now. They get out to they haven't won an SEC opener since beating an unranked Auburn team, I guess 4 seasons ago, 2021. This is 3 seasons since then. So they're 0-3 in openers now. We know last year this team started 1-5 in league play. They got 2 road games back-to-back after this 32-point beatdown at home against Georgia and Florida. Then you come back here against a good Texas A&M team. Florida's no slouch. And Georgia isn't either. This is a deep SEC. There's still 9 teams projected according to Lenardi, the NCAA tournament. Of course, Arkansas, not one of them at 9-5 right now, 0-1. And Arkansas had come into this game 4-1 in its last 5 games against the Tigers. Auburn washed all of that away with this. This is a historic win for that program simply because of the history here. And this is an Arkansas team, again, preseason ranked number 14, has a lot. This team still has plenty of talent. Keon Minifield flashed a lot of what he brings to the table today. This is just not a good basketball team. And we started to think maybe they were moving in the right direction. But if you were really paying attention to these wins, most of them, Arkansas was, even if it built big leads, was hanging on for dear life to win because they just can't finish off defensive possessions. It's one of the worst defensive teams I've seen in Arkansas, certainly under Eric Musselman. And you've given up now, 90 points in the previous game to Wilmington. You scored 106 and won by 16. Now 80-plus today for an Auburn team. We're averaging mid-80s. Auburn was keeping teams in the 60s, scoring 18.1 point winning margin coming into this game on average, which ranked 13th in Division I. So Auburn just added on to that success. They're getting closer to 20-point winning margin per game. When you win by 32, still midway through the season, that helps the optics on your averages for sure. And it's a shame that Arkansas on ESPN, a nationally televised game on ESPN2 today, packed house. You can't fault the fans. Arkansas had multiple recruits in here today as well. Some high-level guys, another 5-star in the house. So you hate to have that kind of performance with that great of a crowd in your home opener in SEC play, the opener at SEC play, and this is the kind of egg you drop. I used profanity to open this. I call it a shit show. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time saying that. I hope I didn't offend anybody. I don't know of a better way to phrase it. I don't. I don't like to ever say that a team quits or players quit. I'm not going to point out individual players. I'm not going to go there. But it looked to me like Arkansas knew it was defeated, knew it was beaten, and played like a team with its tail between its legs most of that second half, like it didn't have a chance to turn the tide. And the fight for a team that already struggles to be tough and blue collar and battle, when it struggles to do that already, to have that kind of defeatism attitude, it just, to me, was in the body language and in the performance. You got to give Auburn credit for doing that, for putting that kind of beat down to where Arkansas just basically, to me, looked like the team kind of surrendered there. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Again, I'm not going to call out individual players. I'm not going to get on anybody. I'm not even going through stats of this game. There's no point in it. It was a debacle. It was a beatdown. I'll add all the stats and stuff to the post-game story. I've got just a shell of a little story out right now. I'll add Musselman quotes. By the way, I asked him in the post-game, about the first half and maybe trying to drill his rotation down, just trying to find something, to talk about when there was a stretch of the game when Arkansas was competitive and in it. He talked a little bit about that. And then I followed up later with a question about the transition defense going back to the first half, because I was really trying to identify where were some of the areas that Arkansas really started to slip up in and really start to get exposed that kind of got the snowball going. What can you identify that maybe if you fixed one or two little things here and there, you keep yourself in the game, you keep your confidence up, and you find a way to stay in a close game to the end? Maybe that was never meant to be, but it's a valid question. And Musselman cut me off, kind of railroaded me on that one. And, I'd asked 2/3 of the question. I was still kind of talking when he cut me off. But he basically said, look, we can talk about transition defense. We can talk about the glass. He goes, every bit of it we were bad in, which is true. That is absolutely true. He covered some of it anyway before we got to that point. And that was it. He got out of there. Keon Minifield was the player interview post-game. I did not ask Keon a question. I was going through notes and getting ready for Musselman. And so, this was a quick post-game. I mean, both Minifield and Muss got in and out. I'm sure Bruce Pearls had his post-game, and Dudley Dawson over at HogvilleNET will have a opposing coach reaction story like he always does for Razorback football and basketball games. So I'm interested to see what Bruce Pearl has to say and what Dudley's got. I know Musselman, we will again have his quotes in the game story a bit later. But again, Auburn comes in here and hands Arkansas a history moment, the wrong kind of history. 83-51, a 32-point home loss. That's never happened for Arkansas at Bud Walton Arena. It's never been that bad. Now it's happened. It happened today. Did I really see this coming with all the issues and troubles that Arkansas's had up to this point? Did I feel like this was on the way? No. I actually thought Arkansas would find an edge today. As good as Auburn is, I thought Arkansas would find a way to keep it close and then use this crowd, fuel off Bud Walton Arena, and find a way to win. I really thought when Arkansas fell apart, not even fall apart, but they slipped up pretty significantly for Auburn to go up 7 at the break. And when that happened, I did have concerns. Well, Arkansas is now in a battle against a team that knows how to win and knows how to win going away. And Arkansas, to me, looked a little bit slow and a little bit lacking belief in what it's doing. That's always a problem. When you can see it in the body language and some of the things going on the court, that there's lack of belief in what you're doing. I mean, maybe I'm over-speaking that, but that's what I'm starting to sense. And so even at halftime, even though technically only 7 down, we've seen Arkansas overcome deficits and come back and win games against really good teams. Not this team. This team was not ready to fight back into this. It just never happened. The second half was all Auburn. Plus 25 on the scoreboard. Those are really all the stats you need are the points. Because we can go through everything, and Auburn really either dominated or won just about every facet of a game that feeds into wins and losses. Man, we were so soft the whole second half. Well, Arkansas's been, you could use that word soft in describing Arkansas. Another leaf blower session for that section over here. Round 3. But yeah, you could use that word soft. I think that's appropriate. Arkansas doesn't put a lot of resistance up on drives. There's not a lot of physicality in sealing guys off for rebounds, walling off drivers. Sometimes you gotta get in there and create a little physicality. And sometimes Arkansas has long stretches where, they kind of lose grip of what, like closing out a half. They kind of lose grip of the moment. And now you've got a stretch of possessions where you're just kind of like a balloon, just kind of the other team touches you and you just float away. You can't have the other team, commanding how things are going to be 3, 4, 5 possessions in a row. You've got to put your stamp somewhere in there. You're not going to win them all. Teams are going to make runs, but you can't be that soft and that easy to just kind of move out of the way, push out of the way, and the other team have its way. And I thought, that's how Auburn finished the first half, and that's obviously how Auburn finished the final 20 minutes. I mean, if you look at the final 24 minutes, Arkansas was up one. They actually got outscored by 33 when you total up the last 4 minutes of the first half and the 25-point deficit in that second half, because Arkansas was up 27-26 with, I think, 3:52 left. Coming out of that timeout, then Auburn just really owned the rest of that game. And, it was, you go back to Oklahoma and Tulsa, that was ugly. Arkansas was in that game through about the same amount of time, 15, 16 minutes. Oklahoma kind of closed the first half right and then owned most of the second half. This seemed even worse to me. The scoreboard says it was. I mean, Arkansas found a way to get within 9 against OU on the final scoreboard. That wasn't indicative of the beatdown in that game. This was even worse. This is, aside from that the point differential is the worst ever, that speaks, pretty clearly what happened. I think just what the eye test told us, Arkansas was inferior in just about every. I mean, this isn't one of those. Well, if this hadn't happened or this hadn't happened, hell, everything happened wrong. I mean, that's it. Everything happened wrong. Some of these comments now, I've got someone saying they're sad. I'm so Razorback. Yeah, I'm sad that I was way off on this one. I really thought Arkansas had a slight edge. I thought it would go to the wire and that BWA might just be enough for Arkansas to win it. I kind of full stop myself on predicting 100% a win, but I thought Arkansas had the edge. And that means what I'm saying is, I'm basically saying I think Arkansas is going to find a way to win it. Arkansas couldn't find a way to win the first half, which doesn't mean the game's over. I mean, you're only down 7. But the body language, some of the stuff that was going on there, even those closing 4 minutes, raised concern for me because I know Auburn's too good for you to halfway come in there and I'm not going to call it fake hustle, but it got to a point in this game where Arkansas, to me, was going through motions and the other team was just punching. It was like Arkansas got back in a corner in a boxing match and just couldn't get out, and the refs just let it go on. I mean, that's as bad as a knockout as you'll see in sports, if you want to make that boxing analogy. It was pretty nasty. Okay, there's been worse games. This isn't the worst of all time. It's the worst of all time here. This place has been open for a minute, going on 30 years now. A bit worried because I don't see the underlying toughness that most of the other teams have had. Right? I mean, look at it from just Ken Palm's analytics. Arkansas's ranked top 20 in the previous 3 years in defensive efficiency. This one coming into today was out in the 80s. Going to be falling from there. That's going to get worse. Maybe up past. I don't know. I need to check that. I guess I could have checked it. It might have already been updated. Toughness shows up on defense. It just does. It shows up on defense. And Arkansas hasn't been good there. I went through a ton of stats showing in these last 5 wins, Arkansas's defense was at least, and in combination with an efficient offense, was 10 points or better plus, 10 plus points or better in shooting percentages, both from 2 and 3. So even though all the hustle plays were keeping teams in games, at least that was something maybe to build on. That was something maybe that was going to be consistent. And in the first half, again, the shooting percentages were pretty even. Arkansas didn't have an advantage there. And then on top of that, losing hustle plays, that's how they got behind by 7. I don't think anybody saw this mushrooming in the second half to a 32-point loss, which is exactly what happened. It was awful. Some people might say it's disgraceful. All right, we're getting close to 20 minutes. At least 8, maybe more visitors in the house or planned to be in the house today. The headliners were a 5-star in the class of 2026. 6'11" center, the number 1 center in that 2026 class, ranked national top 10, a 5-star. Sam Funches out of Germantown, Mississippi, sent me a message a couple of days ago, says, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at Arkansas Auburn. So we tweeted that out. There was a list of guys coming in today, some that have been here several times. Isaiah Seeley, class of 2025, national top 54 star, 6'6" big guard, right here, right down the street. Springdale, can play the 1, 2, or 3, very talented guy. He and Funches we're planning to be in the house today, expected to be here. I did see Funchess early. I didn't, get to put eyes on all the recruits coming in. I saw several, but Funchess was one. Put out a little tweet video. And then Arkansas also made a top 8 list for the class of 2025. The number 1 shooting guard in that class, Darren Peterson, a 6'5", pushing 6'6" guard out of Huntington Prep in West Virginia. And this is a guy, again, the number 1 shooting guard in the country, number 3 overall recruit, high-level 4-star. Hogs are in that top 8 with some blue bloods. Kansas and Kentucky, North Carolina. I mean, there's some big-name schools in there. But his dad, I interviewed his dad, and his dad told me, we're only going to visit 5 of these 8, and Arkansas is going to be one of them. He said his son, Darren Peterson, the recruit, calls Arkansas Guard University. Well, if you look at the last several NBA drafts, guys like Moses Moody, Anthony Black, Nick Smith Jr., Isaiah Joe, Arkansas's had success. Jordan Walsh, he translates as a guard wing in the NBA level. He got drafted early 2nd round. So Arkansas's got a resume there under Eric Musman. And so Peterson calls Arkansas Guard University. That's what his dad told me. His dad also said he loves the playing style. He likes it that Arkansas's coaching staff stays in constant contact. So this is another high-level guy. We looked at guys like Nick Smith Jr., Anthony Black, and Jordan Walsh, all as 5 stars. Maybe this is a guy Arkansas can actually get on campus. Now, his dad told me they're coming for this visit sometime in February or March. We'll keep an eye on that and see if that actually plays out. But recruiting this week has been pretty active when you look at all the visitors here. You talk about Peterson putting Arkansas in that top 8, but also his camp making the claim Arkansas is going to get a visit. And he loves it. He loves the staff and loves what Arkansas is doing. We know getting guys to the NBA is important. Arkansas's got 11 players in the league right now. A lot of that's run through Musselman. Some of it has, half of it has, whatever it is. So, not everything's bad today, other than the loss, which is awful. I know that's front and center in everybody's mind, but there are other moving parts in sports, and recruiting's a big part of it. Certainly, this wasn't a good look. You hope Darren Peterson maybe was watching doing something else today, and not watching this game. I'm sure he'll see the scoreboard, and then the recruits in the house. This atmosphere, though, that's one thing. They need to run up Cleveland Hill. I used to live close by over there when I lived in Fayetteville when I was in my 20s. And I remember they did that. I would check it out a couple of times, and then I started my own exercise regimen running Cleveland Hill, back when exercise meant something to me. But yeah, Cleveland Hill's tough. Maybe they need to do that. I don't know what's going to make a team now 14 games into the season tougher. We've seen this team, we've seen Eric Musselman teams in the past have struggles, and we've seen him correct it, get the ship righted, things work out, and Arkansas makes runs to postseason, which is, if you're going to struggle, you'd rather it be on the front end or the middle and not the end. This one to me is tougher because I don't see tough pieces in there. I see talent, I see length, athleticism, I see a diversity of skills. I mean, Trevor Brazile was lost after 8 games last year. He's a guy that brings different elements. I mean, the NBA guys, the folks that look at, that are going to draft in a few months in June, these teams, he's still projected as a first rounder. He's still projected top 25 on some boards because of what his potential is. We haven't seen it this year. Is he still, lingering mental effects with injuries, knee and then ankle? He doesn't get enough volume of shots, I don't think. His aggressiveness in a lot of areas, both offensive and defensively, leave a lot to be desired. But the talent's there. Jalen Graham today, you thought here he is getting a start. People are clamoring for more Jalen Graham. He did some good things. He got on the offensive glass. I don't know, he had 3 or 4 in one possession and couldn't make the chippy. Well, Arkansas had 1 or 2 really good possessions of getting rebounds on the offensive end and then couldn't finish them. Auburn's taking off on the other end and either getting something easy in transition or working for a good shot. That's a good experienced Auburn team, a good Auburn team. I don't think that's a team that has great players. I think it's a team that has a great 2 deep in the terms of knowing who they are. Bruce Pearl knows what he has. He knows who they are. I mean, Janai Broom, does he end up being an All-American, All-SEC? I don't know. I don't think, I don't know what he translates to the next level. I know what I think he does. I'm not going to predict what it'll be in a few months, but I think that's a team absent of great players, but really, really good college players that play well together. They fit that system. Whatever Eric Musselman is trying to do in getting better as a 3-point shooting team, getting better as a free throw shooting team, some of the other things he addressed in the offseason, I'm not seeing it defensively, and everything always starts on that end with his teams at Arkansas. It always starts on that end. So if you couldn't make that a foundation, if you couldn't make that your identity, if that's not your building block first, and then get better in those other areas, I don't know how this works, because none of his teams have done it on offense. They find ways on offense. They get right on defense. Is there a chance for that with this team? I just don't see it. I just don't see it. There's not even a Kamani Johnson on the bench, your 10th or 11th guy that you can turn to and say, okay, I need you to go in there and be a bowling ball. I need you to send a message. I need you to get some offense, whatever. They don't have that element in anybody. There's nothing like that. And you couldn't live and die off just that, but it helped. It helped Arkansas in some games last year. I mean, we go back to Maui and beating San Diego State, the team that eventual national runner-up. Arkansas had to fight to get that game in overtime in Maui, and that was a big win. And Kamani Johnson has fingerprints all over it. Sometimes you need the 10th, 11th guy to come in and send a message and change the dynamic. We're just not seeing that. Keon Minifield Jr. has helped Arkansas's offensive dynamic for the most part. On a 51-point scoring day, you're scratching your head going, well, what's this? How is this going to look moving forward now once you've stepped up to SEC play? I don't know, but of the lone bright spots in that first half, he seemed to be either scoring or assisting on Arkansas scores. So there's something there. We know Tremont Mark, has been a fairly consistent offensive player. I just don't see the blue-collar stuff in him. I see Devo had a really good game against Wilmington, and not so today. Nobody really did. Credit Auburn, credit the Tigers. Auburn took it to Arkansas. That's all there is to it. Auburn was the superior team, and that proved out in that second half, man. I mean, it was ugly. That was ugly. And if I were in a better mood, I'd probably apologize for using profanity a little bit in this today. I don't normally do that, but I thought it was an apt description of what this turned into. I don't think anybody will disagree with that. I know it's disappointing, and nobody wants to hear there's 17 SEC games to go, because that could be dooming. That could be ugly, as much as it could be a chance to turn around. Points in the paint. I mean, whatever you want to talk about, like Mosman said, whichever facet of the game you want to talk about, advantage Auburn, and most of it was in a big way. The team is better when Devo is on the bench. Devo needs to grow up and ride the bench until he can. Yeah, I mean, today was the first game he didn't start this year. 14 games in, it was the first time not to start. I mentioned the big lineup. I accidentally tweeted that Arkansas had a big lineup with 3 6'10s. I went to sleep for a minute because I forgot Chandler Lawson. I think they listed at 6'7". But with that 7'7" wingspan, he kind of plays like a 6'10" guy. But yeah, I was off on my game today too. Maybe I jinxed everybody before it ever got tipped. It was interesting though. Big lineup nonetheless. You had basically 2 5s and your stretch 4 in Brazil out there. But this is as low as I've seen it, because Arkansas started 1-5 in league play last year. What he did with the shove was ridiculous. Yeah, and we've seen Arkansas get chippy throughout this season. Before in non-conference play, out in the Bahamas, we've seen Arkansas get some technical players, and we saw Auburn's players taunting and pick up a couple of tees today. But Arkansas's had a mix: taunting, flagrant stuff, extra physical stuff that's just not necessary. And so, that's part of the problem today, is that I think everybody was frustrated and then losing their cool. And so you got to start looking at the top. You got to look at the top, man. That's how it always is, top down. When you succeed, it's top down. When you're falling apart, failing, whatever, it's top down. Arkansas started 1-5 in SEC play last year, 0-3 2 years ago, 2-4 3 years ago. What does this turn into in the first 5-6 games? What does it look like? What does it look like after that? Is there? Based on what I see today, I don't think Arkansas can do much better than 2-4 or 1-5 start in league play. Based on this, not just this could have been an outlier and just a horrible freaky occurrence in a vacuum. But we've seen Arkansas. We've seen some bad stuff in 4 losses coming in today. Now it's 5, 9-5. This is not, this may be worse than the other bad starts. Arkansas might find a way to piece together 2 or 3 wins here. I can't even predict that based on what I saw today. I just don't think the league is too good in terms of top to bottom. Arkansas's got a lot of quad one win opportunities ahead. This was one. Arkansas is now 1-4 in quad one games. The Hogs, probably going to. I mean, a game like this, I think you fall outside the top 100 net. I don't know. Auburn's net's pretty strong, maybe not, but you lose by 32 at home, very, very well might. I watched Georgia and Florida today and get ready for two more. Yeah, I mean, that's just it. I mean, Georgia's good. Florida's a project. These are good teams. Texas A&M, when you get back here, has been a ranked team. It's a good team. Team picked in the top 2 or 3 of the SEC preseason, right? To win it by some. And Arkansas could be 0-4, and 0-5, 0. I mean, it could be an 0 through 6 games, which hasn't happened under Musselman as bad as it's been out of the gates. I mean, all of that's on the table. All of that's a potential reality. Hasn't happened yet. Let's not hang all those losses just yet. But I mean, Arkansas hasn't played a true road game this year. Arkansas's, when you look at what the NCAA net and the criteria considers true neutral site games, Arkansas's 1-3 in those. I count North Little Rock in my own mind as I'm counting as a neutral site win, but it was Lipscomb. You almost lost. You barely hung on for a 3-point win. Whatever. Now it's a true road games. If Arkansas can't keep its composure on its home court and battle, fight, and find a way to stay in a game, why should anyone have confidence for 2 games on the road? Then again, maybe getting away from everything, and Arkansas's not going to travel back and forth. School doesn't start for another week, so Arkansas's going to stay on the road. Once they go to Georgia, just going to stay on the road and then hit Florida. Maybe there's something to rally these guys and they could split those games. I'd say, if you could get a split on those right now, everybody would sign up for that. You want to win every game. And based on what I saw today, I'll have to agree with those that saying Arkansas could be facing a 2-game losing streak coming back here and now 0-3 again in league play. Must needs to go only 7 deep, but what 7 is the question? Well, he tried that. I've been writing about this. I said he's been drilling down on the rotation. If you really pay attention to the minutes, even though he was playing everybody still, the minutes had come down, the double-digit minutes to 6 or 7. And I said, but just keep an eye at that back end of that 7 because it's still a 3-headed monster at the center. I don't know that the 5 spot. I don't know that one of those guys will really. So you really have, to me, 5 guys when you looked at it coming into today from Brazil, Minifield, Devo Davis, Battle, and Tremont Mark. Those were guys to me that are typically going to be 25 or more minutes game in and game out. There may be some exceptions, but not many. So there's 5. And then I felt like your 3-headed monster, Jalen Graham, Chandler Lawson, and Mekhi Mitchell are still kind of a work in progress on who's now that 6th or 7th guy in there. Is there another guard coming off the bench? Jeremiah Davenport, whoever, backcourt guy to help fill in a top 7 or 8. So he really, if you watch the first half when it was competitive, that's what Musselman did. He was down to those 5 guys I mentioned. But in this one he started Graham, he filled in with Battle off the bench. Devo came off the bench today, but that was your 7. So you had Lawson and Graham in there. Mekhi Mitchell didn't figure into the first 7, but he got in. It was still a 3-headed monster. So then you got to 8. So 7 or 8, that's what it was the majority of that first half. And we got what has happened to Battle? Well, I mean, Battle's an offensive player. To me, he's not been a guy that defensively has stood up. And you could say that about most of the players in the 1 through what Musselman said today, 1 through 14, whatever. There's just been a poor defensive effort individually from a lot of guys, and that's been a consistent problem. So I do think when you start looking at Battle, he's a guy that can still, there will be other matchups where he's not done. He's not finished helping Arkansas with production. He came in as the 3rd leading scorer, over 14 points per game. He tweaked his ankle in the last game, only had 2, only played 7 first half minutes. Didn't shoot well against OU's, had, several 20-plus point games this year. That's helped Arkansas beat Duke. Did some really good things in that game, scored and assisted, had 5 assists in that game. So he's not finished, but I think all of these guys are struggling to play together. And so when that happens, some of the individuals start looking pretty crummy, some of the individual stuff, because you have to play together for individuals to really shine. Because if you're not winning, and you're not playing winning basketball, a few stats, double-figure scores, this and that, doesn't mean a whole lot. It really becomes a moot point. All right, 35 minutes in, I'm going to sign off. Let's wrap it up. I think we've covered just about everything. Arkansas Razorbacks failed F- today at Bud Walton Arena in the SEC opener. Auburn Tigers an A+. I guess it's polar opposites. 83-51. Auburn knocks the Hogs down. Hogs fall hard, fast, and often. 32-point loss, the biggest ever, the worst ever, the largest losing margin ever at Bud Walton Arena. Signing off. Until next time, see you then.